There is always a debate about how important graphics are for immersion in a VR title. I cannot deny that they are important because the more lifelike they are, the more you feel like you belong in that world. On the other hand, there are titles here and there that effectively draw players into their magical or sometimes twisted world without shiny and beautiful graphics, but with other methods such as story, atmosphere, and at certain moments, gameplay. All these things can engross you so much in VR that you truly forget you are in a fictional reality and instead feel fear, tension, action, and some deeper emotions. When the title By Grit Alone was announced, I was skeptical because the graphics looked like those in a VR title that came out several years ago. I simply didn't try to delve deeper into the title through the trailer to understand the art style that the developers were pushing or the direction of the story. I saw that it was a horror game where simple colors dominated, and I can't say I was drawn to it. I have to admit I was a bit hypocritical because, for example, Vendetta Forever also has very simple graphics with a palette of a few colors, and it didn't bother me. However, something about the style felt off-putting at the beginning. That was the case until a few days ago when I got early access to the game before its release for this review. By Grit Alone is a single-player horror title set in the Bermuda Triangle of space, which is crammed with abandoned, alien-occupied spaceships. You wake up on one of them, and your goal is to find a way out of this part of space. Each ship you encounter is quite unique, from the look of the rooms, through the enemies, and of course, the story. Oh yes, the story. The game was created by a few people, veterans of the VR industry when it comes to horror games. This includes Anthony Johnson, who worked on Dead Space and Resident Evil 8, and Emma Beebe, one of the writers in the Doctor Who series, as well as the Judge Dredd movie and Rookie. Their task was quite simple: to create the most twisted story, or better said stories, that would connect it to a grand cosmic narrative that would blow players away. And oh boy, they succeeded. In the game, you will visit 5 or 6 spaceships that are abandoned in space and occupied by a creepy, terrifying alien species that destroys all life that comes before them. Each of these ships will have its own story. Initially, you will follow the logs of the last surviving crew member and follow her adventure in trying to escape the ship. You will uncover the secrets of these ships and what happened on them before the alien attack. You will witness so many twisted twists and events that it's incredible. At times, you will be able to play holographic recordings that show what happened just before the tragedy. The voice acting is simply fantastic, and in these moments, the game reminds me a lot of Dead Space and even some Alien movies, and personally, it reminds me of Event Horizon, a cult space horror from the 90s. I have to admit that this component of the game is so well done that no one will be indifferent when they hear what has happened.
To the shithole of walls, but none of those fucking spider things around here yet.
Prince, humble servant to all of womankind.
The fuck
Please
is that?
continue this way to the
It's
entry.
green and yellow.
Thank you.
It bloody stinks. I'm gonna try and go around it. I'll try to.
Combined with what will happen in the game, wandering through dark corridors, creepy music coming from all sides, and the sounds of spider-like aliens creeping up on you from all sides, the game will be a very, very tense and eerie experience for all players. However, the weirdness doesn't end there. As I mentioned, all the people who inhabited these ships were weird in their way, and their way of living, beliefs, and everything else on the ship will amaze you. Not because everything was wonderful and great, but because each of them was a bit crazy in their way, twisted, a psychopath, or a sociopath. However, I must admit, it was wonderful to explore their stories, motivations, and creating a certain society on these ships, and of course, to relive their downfall. The best part about this game is that when you leave one ship and move on to another, the entire setting changes. From the appearance of the ships and the overall ambience to the stories you follow. Although each story is a standalone entity, they all merge into one in the end. While on some ships, you will follow the logs of survivors. On others, you will be accompanied by a deranged AI that is, so to speak, the only survivor in that place. However, the AI will not always be as helpful as one might expect. Now, I must touch on the gameplay. At the start, you receive a modular gun that functions as a shotgun when fired with one hand or a slightly stronger long gun when held with both hands. Additionally, there are so-called chargers that will auto-replenish on your belt, although manual reloading is required. Interestingly, these ball-shaped chargers have two functions. They serve as ammunition for your gun and can also be used as grenades. However, since the whole game takes place in an environment with messed-up gravity, throwing those grenades will be a challenge at times, especially during tense moments. Interestingly, from start to finish, this will be your only weapon, or rather, your only weapons. Occasionally, you will get something akin to shields to pass certain segments of a level, but nothing you'll keep for long during the playthrough. I thought this would be a problem, but the combat is so chaotic, tense, and terrifying that even if you had more than one weapon, managing them would be a significant problem. The lack of a large arsenal is compensated by the atmosphere, fast-paced action, and the fight for survival. Oh yes, this game is hard, probably one of the toughest I've played in VR. You will die repeatedly and reload from the last checkpoint, but they are frequent enough that it won't be a problem. At times, you have to pay attention to every aspect of the level if you want to survive. As I mentioned, the main enemies in the game are those small aliens. Their diversity isn't huge, but if you hate them at the start, believe me, you'll hate them until the very end. Not because they stay the same throughout, but because they always find a way to sneak up behind you and attack, while only a few of their hits can send you back to reloading the level. However, they're not the only danger in the game. The spaceships themselves, or rather their AI, also pose a threat. At times, you'll have to fight or, better said, outsmart the ship's AI to reach your goal. Sneaking, planning, deception, all are part of it, and combined with aliens that are always present, it creates quite the chaos during gameplay, a situation that can easily be overwhelming. Your health does not regenerate. Instead, you have to find special stations that will restore your health when needed, but they can only be used once, so you always have to be careful and know what you're doing, where you can take risks, where to hurry, and where you need to be extremely cautious during the passage. At every step, something will happen. You'll never be sure what's waiting around the corner. Combined with the dark atmosphere and dim colors in the game, with a small light attached to your shotgun, the overall experience simply won't be pleasant for everyone. However, I must return to the story because it is simply perfect, perhaps one of the best in VR so far. I remember talking about how storytelling in VR is simply lacking in first-person shooter games, reserved for other genres. So, you get either this from one genre or that from another. Sure, there are exceptions like the recent Batman and Metro, but once again, By Grid alone is proof that with a good story, simple presentation, incredible atmosphere, and excellent voice acting, everything is possible. It's incredible how twisted these stories are. A few parts even reminded me of Bioshock and System Shock. More precisely, By Grid alone, in terms of storytelling and action, is a mix of all the mentioned games, and that's what makes it special in VR. Even the color palette is reminiscent of System Shock, which is, of course, a compliment, not a bad thing. By Grid alone serves as a reminder, for me and everyone else, not to judge a book by its cover, but to dive a bit deeper beneath the sometimes unappealing surface to experience something unique. Rarely does a game pull me to continue playing just to see what happened to the inhabitants, in this case, of each subsequent ship. The game is decently long and is simply a must-have for all VR players. Except, of course, if you are afraid of the dark and creepy aliens and twisted events at every turn.
What a wonderful hymn to end on, and so beautifully sung, my brides. Now, listen to me carefully. What is about to happen may seem momentarily scary or painful, but please remember, we are ascending to a holier state.